Hello and welcome to a very short discussion of Chapter 22 of Crow Country by Kate Constable. This is a very important chapter in the development of the narrative, but realistically, in terms of our analysis, in terms of our discussion, there's only a few areas that we really need to highlight and take special note of here. Initially, Walter and Sadie make up a reasonable excuse to need to go and talk to Auntie Lily, and they justify that by saying they have to do an oral history project for school. Of course, Ellie and David don't seem to mind too much, as it gives them an opportunity to go and spend some time together as well. The first part of the chapter details the group of four of them going out to Auntie's place and the interaction with the Aboriginal community. But what we really need to get to is the discussion. It's the dialogue between Auntie Lily, Walter and Sadie. Now, I'd like to draw your attention to this description of Auntie Lily where Sadie recalls that her eyes were milky, and they were so milky that she must be almost blind, which is in direct opposition with other descriptions of eyes that we've had so far throughout this text, namely the eyes of the crows that are very dark and deep and quite eerie. These are perhaps a little bit eerie, but for the opposite sort of reason. They do not see. And don't forget too that Crow often says that he cannot see, or I shouldn't say he, the spirit crow says that it cannot see. Anyway, as Walter talks to his auntie, or Auntie Lily, Sadie comments on his style of narrative, on the way he speaks here, and she says he wasn't telling it properly. He hadn't started at the beginning. He was leaving things out. So as he's recalling the events that have unfolded over the last few weeks, he's not doing it in the way that Sadie would have. And of course, what Walter's doing actually reflects the narrative style of Aboriginal people. They do not structure their narratives in the same way that non-Indigenous people do. So he's embodying, he is representing that very traditional way of speaking, particularly to one's elders. At the end of this, they get some really important information from Auntie Lily, where she says, "My uncle was a clever man," she said. "He was killed, long time ago. Got in a fight, some bugger shot him. Never find his body. My auntie, she look all over, never find him. They tell her he gone away, but she know that's not true. He come to her in a dream, He tell her that the bugger shot him. She never find his body." And this revelation is of course exactly what Sadie had experienced in her last episode, her last time slip episode. And so now some of the pieces are starting to fit together. They've got a direct connection with the events beyond just the Hazard and Mortlock family. And once Sadie becomes a little bit emboldened by the fact that she's aware of what's going on, she has the wind taken out of her in this section here, where Auntie Lily essentially belittles her and berates her, and it's an interesting part of the text for us to have a look at. "You people, you think you all know about the dreaming. You think the dreaming was long ago, but you're wrong. The dreaming is now. The dreaming is always, forever. It circles around and around. It never ends. It's always happening. And us mob, we're part of it, all the time, everywhere, and every when too. You think you know everything, but you don't understand. Everything's alive. Not just people, not just animals. every rock, every tree. Do you know that? Now, one of the reasons why this passage is so interesting is because it challenges, I suppose, the thoughts that many non-Indigenous Australians would have about the dreaming, in thinking that we understand certain aspects of it, when really what we have is quite a naive and superficial understanding. And here we can also see that Sadie, who is such an open-minded person, she's willing to learn, and a lot like many members of the audience who read this book, is taken back by the fact that there is still this gap, still this distance between themselves and the Aboriginal community. And of course, at this point, Sadie gets sent outside. Essentially, she's removed from the dialogue, from the conversation between Walter and Auntie Lily. Once she's allowed back in the room, Sadie really wants to defend herself, and she says, "But I'm not a bad person." And Walter, again showing a lot of maturity, says no one thinks they're a bad person. And he's right there. We don't really recognise that what we're doing is wrong, because from our perspective it's justified. And what's happening here is that Sadie is in fact being judged, and she's not used to that, because she's used to being in the part of the majority of society, the non-Indigenous, and now she's being judged by the Indigenous portion of society. And of course she's being judged for the actions of people from the last few generations. And so while she may not be the sort of person that is racist and sort of fights against Aboriginal rights and things, she's certainly being judged for the behaviour of her forefathers here. And Auntie Lily's quite justified in doing so. She's been affected by other people so many times that she doesn't want to allow it to happen again. And this section here, when Auntie Lily questions Sadie about having some Aboriginal heritage, she says, "You got some blackfella blood in you?" Auntie Lily asked suddenly. Sadie was startled. "No?" Then uncertainly, "I don't think so. I don't know much about my dad's family, I don't know." And this raises the question that, or the point rather, that a lot of Australians wouldn't know if they had some Aboriginal heritage. There would be a lot of people out there, because of the number of Aboriginal people that were stolen from their families and placed in white homes through the stolen generation. There are a lot of people who wouldn't know if they had some Aboriginal ancestry or not. Sadie, of course, may well be one of them. So this dialogue here again raises some interesting questions for the audience to reflect on. And whilst Sadie and Walter have gone to Auntie Lily for answers, I don't think they really got what they bargained for. Especially when Auntie Lily says, "I don't know what the spirits want. You the ones who talk to the crows, eh? You the ones they talk to." She's implying that they need to listen more. It's implying that they've got to pay more attention, they've got to be more aware, and realise that they've essentially got to trust in themselves to be able to do the right thing. And I really think that this is one of the things that spurs Sadie on to try and solve this mystery. By the end of the chapter, Sadie and Walter, in their discussions and reflections on what they've just heard, agree on the only possible course of action. And I'll just read this bit out. Sadie gasped and clutched Walter's arm. Craig said the other day that he had some Aboriginal bits and pieces lying around. They stared at each other. "They got them in that big old house," Walter said, "hidden away somewhere." "So what are we going to do?" Walter drew himself upright. "Easy. Go and take them back." So, whilst they may be taking matters into their own hands, they feel justified. They feel as though that is a righteous course of action. And this is a great passage because it really sets up the conflict for the rest of the narrative. This is the impetus that leads us to the climax of the text. So there's a lot going on here, some really important quotations in this section. I hope that this short discussion has helped you identify some of those more clearly. This has been an ETV production brought to you by Printable Catholic College.